Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Ben 10 found the Seraphim Omnitrix in Highschool DxD and secured the Harem of Gwen, Rias, Grayfia and Charmcaster? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Blank. Chapter 1. Convergence Point. The abandoned Bellwood Research Center loomed against the twilight sky, its concrete facade weathered by time and neglect. Broken windows reflected the dying sunlight like fractured mirrors, creating the illusion of eyes watching from within the darkness. Ben Tennyson crouched behind an overgrown hedge, the familiar weight of the Omnitrix on his wrist a constant reminder of who he was and what he could become. Energy readings are off the charts, Gwen whispered beside him, her EY's glowing faintly purple as she channeled her mana to scan the building. Whatever's in there, it's not from Earth. Not even from this dimension. Ben nodded, running a hand through his brown hair, longer than he'd worn it in his early hero days. At 17, he'd grown taller, more confident, his lanky teenage frame filling out with lean muscle earned through years of combat. Anything like the hybrid, or maybe another Chronosapian messing with time. Gwen's brow furrowed, the magical aura around her hands fluctuating. No. This is different. It feels almost sacred, but corrupted somehow. She lowered her hands, the purple glow fading. I've never sensed anything like it. The evening breeze carried the scent of ozone and something else, something reminiscent of burnt sugar and old books. Ben tapped the Omnitrix, cycling through his roster of alien forms. Only one way to find out. You ready? Gwen adjusted her blue headband, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. As ready as I'll ever be to walk into another potentially world-ending situation. You know, most people our age are worried about college applications. Ben's lips quirked into a half-smile. Yeah, well, most people can't turn into aliens or cast spells. Besides, saving the universe looks great on a resume. With practiced ease, he activated the Omnitrix, the familiar green light washing over him as his DNA restructured. When the transformation completed, Big Chill's spectral form hovered above the ground, frost emanating from his body. I was going for Swampfire, but this works too, his raspy voice echoed. Let's go. Big Chill phased through the concrete wall, Gwen following by creating mana platforms that carried her over the chain-link fence and through a broken window. Inside, the temperature dropped dramatically, but not from Big Chill's presence. Ben, Gwen called softly, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Look, in the center of what once had been a large laboratory, a tear in reality pulsated with blue-white energy. It wasn't like a portal or a doorway, more like someone had taken a knife and cut a jagged wound in the fabric of space itself. Through the gap, glimpses of another world flickered. Gothic architecture, crimson skies, and something that looked disturbingly like wings. Okay, definitely not hybrid, Big Chill commented, floating closer. Some kind of dimensional breach. Gwen approached cautiously, her hands raised defensively, magic swirling around her fingertips. It's unstable. Whatever's causing this doesn't know what they're doing. Hair forcing connections between dimensions that shouldn't touch. A sudden surge of energy erupted from the tear, sending equipment flying across the room. Big Chill instinctively phased, the debris passing harmlessly through him, while Gwen erected a mana shield that deflected a flying desk. I think we should. Ben started, but was interrupted as the tear expanded violently, releasing a wave of energy that knocked even his intangible form backward. The Omnitrix flickered, the force of the dimensional energy interfering with its function. With a flash of green light, Ben reverted to human form, landing hard on the concrete floor. Ben, Gwen called out, maintaining her shield as she edged toward him. I'm fine, he grunted, pushing himself up. The Omnitrix is. The device on his wrist suddenly sparked, its green interface turning a brilliant gold before fading completely. That's not good. Before either cousin could react further, three figures emerged from the dimensional tear, two men and a woman, each dressed in what looked like a bizarre blend of modern clothing and ceremonial robes. The woman stepped forward, her silver hair cascading down her back in stark contrast to her crimson eyes. The artifact responds to him, she said, her voice carrying an accent Ben couldn't place, something ancient yet oddly melodic. He bears the celestial interface. The taller of the men snarled, revealing unnaturally sharp canines. Impossible. A human child cannot be the harbinger. Ben stood, positioning himself between the strangers and Gwen. I don't know what a harbinger is, but you're trespassing in my universe. How about you step back through your little tear there before I have to get unfriendly? The shorter man laughed, a sound like broken glass. The monkey speaks as though it has authority. He raised a hand, and darkness coalesced around his fingertips. Let us educate it on its place in the cosmic hierarchy. Ben's hand hovered over the Omnitrix, which remained distressingly inert. Gwen, any ideas? His cousin had already begun an incantation, ancient Aramaic flowing from her lips as sigils formed in the air around them. Imperium maledictus, vincula disrupta. The silver-haired woman's eyes widened. A sorceress. Here, she moved with inhuman speed, appearing directly before Gwen and gripping her wrist. Your magical lineage, it's not possible. Gwen twisted free, her entire body now glowing with mana. Trust me, lady, you don't want to find out what's possible. The dimensional tear pulsed again, this time more violently, and something new began to emerge, not a person, but an object. It gleamed with an otherworldly light, hovering in the space between realities, a device that looked hauntingly similar to the Omnitrix, yet different. Ben's watch was predominantly green and black, this one shone with hues of gold, white, and electric blue, with intricate symbols etched into its surface that seemed to shift and change as if alive. The Seraphim interface, the silver-haired woman breathed. After millennia of searching, Grayfia, secure it, the taller man commanded, lunging forward. Ben, acting on instinct honed through years of combat, dove toward the hovering device at the same moment. Time seemed to slow as his fingers brushed against its surface. The moment of contact sent a jolt of energy through his body, like GHTNING, but oddly painless, more like every cell in his being suddenly remembered something long forgotten. The Seraphim device reacted to his touch, unfolding like a mechanical flower before wrapping itself around his right wrist, opposite the dormant Omnitrix. No, the shorter man roared, his human visage slipping to reveal something distinctly non-human beneath, scales and shadows and too many teeth. The silver-haired woman, Grayfia, stepped back, her expression a mixture of shock and something that looked almost like respect. It has chosen, she said simply. The new device on Ben's wrist pulsed once, twice, then projected a holographic display unlike anything he'd seen before. Instead of silhouettes of aliens, it showed beings of light, creatures with multiple wings, entities composed of pure energy. The symbols around its circumference rearranged themselves, flowing like liquid gold until they formed patterns that somehow, inexplicably, Ben could read. Seraphim Omnitrix, he muttered, the knowledge appearing in his mind without explanation. Celestial interface. The taller man hissed something in a language that hurt Ben's ears, then lunged forward with inhuman speed, darkness trailing from his fingertips like toxic smoke. The human cannot be allowed to leave with it. Ben raised his arm instinctively, and the Seraphim Omnitrix responded. A shield of golden light materialized, stopping the attack cold. The impact sent the attacker flying backward, crashing through what remained of a laboratory workstation. Vocal. Enough, Grayfia commanded, her voice carrying an authority that made even Ben stand straighter. The Seraphim has made its choice. We cannot interfere with celestial mandate. The shorter man, still partially transformed into something monstrous, snarled. The Council will not accept this. The Council does not command the heavens, Grayfia replied coldly. Neither do we. A new voice echoed through the laboratory, seemingly coming from everywhere at once. But I do. The dimensional tear widened further, and a figure stepped through, tall, elegant, dressed in robes of midnight blue embroidered with what looked like star charts and mathematical equations. His face was hidden beneath a hood, but his hands, when he raised them, were covered in intricate tattoos that glowed with inner light. The convergence has begun, he announced. Earlier than anticipated, but the players are in position. He turned to face Ben, and though his features remained in shadow, Ben felt the weight of his gaze. Benjamin Tennyson, bearer of the Omnitrix, now chosen by the Seraphim as well. The universe has a curious sense of humor. Ben squared his shoulders, the Seraphim Omnitrix humming with energy on his wrist. I don't know who you are or what's happening. But if you're planning something that puts Earth in danger. Earth. The hooded figure chuckled. Your perspective remains charmingly provincial. This concerns not just your world, but all worlds, all dimensions. All planes of existence. Gwen moved to stand beside Ben, her hands still glowing with magical energy. Then maybe you should explain what exactly is going on before we decide whether to help or stop you. The figure turned toward Grayfia and her companions. Your intervention was premature. The pathways were not fully established. Grayfia bowed slightly. The council grew impatient. The signs indicated the harbinger would emerge from the human realm, but they did not anticipate this specific human. Signs can be misinterpreted, the figure replied. Prophecies even more so. He returned his attention to Ben. You have been chosen twice, Benjamin Tennyson. Once by technology, and now by something far beyond it. The Seraphim Omnitrix is not merely a tool, it is a key. A key to what? Ben asked, increasingly frustrated with the cryptic conversation. To the barriers between realms, the figure answered. For millennia, the dimensional boundaries have been maintained artificially, keeping certain powers separate, certain truths hidden. That time is ending. The tear in reality pulsed again, this time revealing glimpses of other places, a school campus under a blood-red moon. An ancient temple surrounded by cherry blossoms, a battlefield where beings with wings of light and shadow clashed above a human city. Suddenly, Ben's original Omnitrix reactivated, its green interface flickering to life. But instead of returning to normal, it began to synchronize with the Seraphim device, green energy flowing into gold. The two technologies, or perhaps one technology. And one something else, communicating in ways that sent shivers up Ben's spine. Interesting, the hooded figure murmured. The Primus DNA database is interfacing with the celestial templates. This was unexpected. Is that bad? Ben asked, watching as the two devices on his wrists pulsed in unison. Not bad, simply unprecedented. The figure gestured, and the dimensional tier stabilized, its erratic pulsing settling into a steady hum. It seems the convergence will proceed more quickly than anticipated. You should prepare yourself. Prepare for what? Gwen demanded. What exactly is going to happen? Before the figure could answer, the shorter of the two men, the one Grayfia had called vocal, lunged forward with a roar of defiance. Enough talk. The interface belongs to the council. His hand, now fully transformed into a scaled claw, reached for Ben's wrist. The Seraphim Omnitrix flared in response, and Ben felt knowledge pour into his mind, knowledge of forms beyond human comprehension. Of powers that transcended physical laws. Acting on instinct, he activated the device. Light erupted from both Omnitrixes simultaneously, enveloping Ben in a cocoon of green and gold energy. When it faded, he had transformed, but not into any alien he recognized. His body glowed with inner light, wings of energy extending from his back, his eyes shining like twin suns. Power coursed through him, familiar yet utterly different from any transformation he had experienced before. Luminous, he named himself, the word coming from nowhere and everywhere. Vocal faltered, then fell to his knees. The seraph form, impossible. Grayfia's eyes widened. He's accessed a celestial template already. Without training, the hooded figure merely nodded, as if confirming a theory. As I suspected, his experience with the original Omnitrix has prepared him. His mind can handle the transition. Ben, Luminous, raised a hand, and light coalesced around his fingertips. I don't know what's happening, but I know you're not taking either of these devices from me. Whatever this convergence is, whatever you're planning, it's not happening without my say-so. The hooded figure bowed slightly. Of course not. That is precisely why the Seraphim chose you, Benjamin Tennyson. Your universe has named you hero, protector, champion. Now other realms will know you as well. Gwen stepped forward, her eyes narrowed. Other realms like wherever these three came from. With the red sky and Gothic architecture. The underworld, Grayfia answered, her tone respectful but cautious as she regarded Ben's transformed state. What you would call the realm of demons, though that translation loses much in its simplicity. Demons, Ben repeated, his voice resonating with harmonics that weren't entirely human. As in actual, literal demons. Just as there are aliens beyond your world, There are beings beyond your dimension, the hooded figure explained. Demons, angels, fallen angels, gods of various pantheons, creatures of myth and legend, all real, all existing in planes adjacent to your own. And now the barriers between those planes are breaking down, Gwen concluded, her analytical mind quickly connecting the dots. That's what this convergence is. Precisely. The figure gestured to the dimensional tear, which now showed clear images of the other world, a place where impossible architecture defied physics. Where beings with bat-like wings soared through crimson skies. For eons, the supernatural realms have been kept separate from the material plane, your world, with only limited crossover. That separation is ending. Why? Ben demanded, the light around him pulsing with his rising concern. And why now? The figure's hood shifted slightly, suggesting he had tilted his head. Because the threats emerging require it. Because isolation has weakened all realms. Because evolution demands change. He paused. And because someone has been deliberately accelerating the process, forcing connections that should develop naturally over centuries to form in mere months. Grayfia stepped forward, her regal bearing unchanged despite the tension in the room. The council believes it is the work of Kokabeel, a fallen angel seeking to restart the Great War. Others suspect Ophis, the infinite dragon god, or perhaps Rizvam Levon Lucifer. Names that mean nothing to me, Ben said, though Omething in his transformed state seemed to recognize them, distant knowledge flickering at the edges of his consciousness. They will, the hooded figure assured him. The Seraphim Omnitrix contains knowledge of all realms, all beings, all powers. It will reveal what you need to know, when you need to know it. The dimensional tear suddenly contracted violently, the edges becoming jagged and unstable. The pathway is collapsing, the figure announced. Premature activation has destabilized the connection. Vakal snarled. We cannot return without the interface. You can and you will, Grayfia countered, her tone brooking no argument. The Seraphim has chosen. We must report to the council and prepare for what comes next. The taller man, who had remained silent since being thrown across the room, finally spoke. And what of the human? He knows nothing of our world, our ways, our enemies. He will learn, the hooded figure replied simply. As will she. He nodded toward Gwen. The Anodite blood runs strong in her veins, though differently channeled than is typical for your kind. Gwen blinked. How do you know about? I know many things, Gwendolyn Tennyson. Including that your magical abilities will be crucial in the days to come. The figure turned back to Ben. The transformation will fade soon. When it does, the Seraphim will enter a calibration period, integrating with your DNA and the original Omnitrix. Do not force it to activate again until this process completes. Ben nodded, already feeling the energy that sustained his transformed state beginning to ebb. And then what? And then you will begin to understand what it means to be a bridge between worlds. The figure gestured, and the dimensional tear began to close. We will meet again, Benjamin Tennyson, when the convergence progresses further. Grayfia and her companions moved toward the shrinking gap between dimensions. She paused at the threshold, looking back at Ben with those unsettling crimson eyes. The underworld will know of you now. Bearer of the Seraphim, some will seek your aid. Others, your destruction. Her gaze shifted to include Gwen. Both of you should prepare. The demons of the Emery clan will reach out soon. They are more amenable to cooperation with humans than most. With that cryptic warning, she stepped through the tear, followed by her companions. The hooded figure remained a moment longer. One final warning, he said, his voice growing fainter as the dimensional gap narrowed. The power you now possess will draw attention from across all realms. Not all of it welcome. Trust in the Seraphim's guidance, but never forget your own judgment. It is, after all, why you were chosen. The tear sealed itself with a sound like thunder, leaving Ben and Gwen alone in the abandoned laboratory. The golden light surrounding Ben flickered, then faded entirely, returning him to human form. The Seraphim Omnitrix on his right wrist pulsed once more, then dimmed to a standby state. A soft blue glow emanating from symbols that continued to shift and change across its surface. For a long moment, neither cousin spoke, both trying to process what had just occurred. Finally, Gwen broke the silence. So, she said, in the dry tone she reserved for particularly absurd situations, demons are real, there's an underworld with actual Gothic architecture, and you've just been hosen by some kind of angelic smartwatch to save multiple dimensions. Typical Tuesday for the Tennysons. Ben couldn't help but laugh, the tension of the encounter breaking. Yeah, pretty much. Though, usually the universe-threatening stuff waits until at least Thursday. He examined the new device on his wrist. What do you make of this thing? Gwen approached, her expression turning serious as she studied the Seraphim Omnitrix. It's not just technology. There's magic woven into it, old magic, powerful. She closed her eyes, extending her magical senses. It feels alive, somehow. Aware. Great, Ben muttered, as if one sentient watch wasn't enough trouble. He looked down at his original Omnitrix, which had returned to its normal green glow but seemed somehow changed, the interface slightly altered. New symbols appearing alongside the familiar ones. We should call Grandpa Max, Gwen suggested. The plumbers need to know about this dimensional breach, especially if more are coming. Ben nodded, already reaching for his phone, but paused as a thought struck him. Hey, Gwen, that woman, Grayfia, she mentioned something about the Grimoire clan reaching out. Any idea what that means? Gwen shook her head. Not specifically, but based on context, there's some kind of demon faction, possibly more friendly toward humans than others. Which, given that they're still demons, isn't necessarily saying much. Right, Ben sighed, running a hand through his hair. So we've got multiple dimensions converging, demons and who knows what else crossing over, and apparently I'm supposed to be some kind of dimensional bridge because I've got 2 watches instead of 1. And something tells me those 3 weren't the bad guys in this scenario. Probably not the good guys either, Gwen pointed out. More like interested parties with their own agenda. The question is, what agenda? Ben looked around at the damaged laboratory, evidence of the dimensional breach already fading as reality reasserted itself. And who was that hooded guy? He seemed to know everything that was happening, like he was orchestrating it somehow. Gwen's expression turned thoughtful, or at least expecting it. He said the convergence was happening earlier than anticipated, which means he knew it was coming. Before either could speculate further, both of their phones chimed simultaneously, the special alert tone reserved for plumber emergency communications. Ben checked his screen. Multiple energy signatures all over Bellwood, he read aloud, a knot forming in his stomach. Unknown origin, similar to the one we just encountered but smaller. Gwen was already pulling up a map on her own device. They're forming a pattern, she observed, showing Ben the screen. Concentric circles, centered on us. Or more specifically, on that new Omnitrix. Ben looked down at the Seraphim device, which had begun to pulse more rapidly, as if responding to the new dimensional breaches. I think calibration time just got cut short. Outside, the evening sky had darkened prematurely, clouds gathering with unnatural speed. Lightning flashed. Not the usual blue-white of terrestrial storms, but crimson and gold. The colors reflecting off the clouds in patterns too geometric to be natural. We need backup, Gwen said, already dialing. Kevin, Rook, anyone available? Ben nodded, but his attention was fixed on the Seraphim Omnitrix, which had begun projecting a holographic display, a map that mirrored the one on Gwen's phone, showing the locations of dimensional breaches but with additional information. Symbols indicating what type of entities were emerging, power levels, threat assessments. I think it's trying to help, he murmured, studying the display. Look, it's categorizing the breaches. These E3 are marked as minor demonic entities, probably something we can handle. But this one, he pointed to a larger signature pulsing ominously on the eastern edge of town. It's labeled Fallen Exarch, and the threat level is, well. The symbol just keeps getting bigger. Gwen ended her call, looking grim. Kevin's on his way. Rook's off-world, but Grandpa's mobilizing every plumber in the sector. She peered at the holographic display. What's an exarch? No idea, Ben admitted. But I'm guessing we're about to find out. The Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed again, this time projecting a errant image. A humanoid figure with 6 wings, wielding a spear of light, but corrupted somehow, darkness seeping through cracks in what should have been radiant armor. Kokabeel, a voice whispered from the device, startling both of them. Fallen angel, star of God, Exarch of the Grigori. Power level. Extreme caution. It talks, Gwen said unnecessarily. Apparently, Ben replied, staring at the projection. And it knows who's coming through that breach. The image faded, replaced by the map once more. The signature labeled, Fallen Exarch, was moving, heading toward the center of Bellwood. We need to intercept it before it reaches populated areas, Ben decided, his expression hardening into the one Gwen recognized from countless battles. Determined, focused, ready. You coordinate with Kevin and the plumbers. Handle the minor breaches. I'll deal with this Kokabeel. Gwen's eyes widened. Ben, no, we have no idea what a fallen angel is capable of, especially one labeled, Extreme Caution. We need to stick together. We need to protect the city, Ben countered. And I've got this. He held up his right wrist, the Seraphim Omnitrix glowing with increasing intensity. It chose me for a reason, right? Time to find out what that reason is. Before Gwen could argue further, Ben activated his original Omnitrix, transforming in a flash of green light into XLR-8, the Kinesolaran form he often used for rapid transit. I'll be fine, he assured her, his voice faster and more mechanical through XLR-8's helmet. Besides, when have I ever not been fine? Gwen raised an eyebrow. Do you want that list alphabetically or chronologically? XLR-8's face plate retracted momentarily, revealing Ben's grin. That's why I have you to bail me out. The face plate snapped back into place. Call me when Kevin arrives. And Gwen, be careful. With that, he was gone in a blur of motion, leaving Gwen alone in the abandoned laboratory. She looked down at her phone, at the multiplying energy signatures. And then at the sky visible through the broken windows, where impossible lightning continued to flash. You too, doofus, she whispered. You too. Across town, in the upscale neighborhood of Bellwood Heights, a different kind of dimensional disturbance was forming. Unlike the violent tear that had appeared in the research center, this one opened smoothly, elegantly, like a door being unlocked by someone who possessed the proper key. Through this portal stepped a young woman with flowing crimson hair, striking teal eyes, and an aura of authority that seemed at odds with her apparent age. He wore what looked like a private school uniform, crisp white shirt, black skirt, matching blazer with an unfamiliar crest embroidered on the breast pocket. Behind her emerged several others, a petite, white-haired girl whose expressionless face belied the alertness in her eyes, a young man with short blonde hair and a smile that seemed almost too perfect, a young woman with long black hair tied in a ponytail. Her figure athletic and her stance suggesting martial arts training, and finally, a bespectacled young woman whose calculating gaze took in every detail of their surroundings. Rias, the bespectacled woman said quietly, "Are you certain this is wise? Crossing dimensions without authorization from your brother. My brother doesn't need to authorize my every move." Akino, the red-haired woman, Rias, replied. Her tone gentle but firm. Especially when time is of the essence. If Grayfia's intelligence is correct, the bearer of the Seraphim is here, in this city. And if Kokabeel reaches them first? The blonde young man asked, his perfect smile fading to reveal genuine concern. Rias's expression hardened slightly. Then we will do what we must, Kiba. The power of the House of Grimoire stands ready to defend the bearer. Whoever they may be. The white-haired girl suddenly tensed, her nose twitching slightly. I smell something, she said, her voice soft but clear. Power. Not devil, not angel. Something different. Quote, which direction, Kaneko? Rias asked. Kaneko pointed toward the eastern part of the city, where lightning, normal lightning, not the crimson gold variety illu, monotting the sky elsewhere, was beginning to flash among gathering storm clouds. It seems our fallen friend has already arrived, Akino observed, a strange excitement entering her voice. Shall we go greet him properly? Rias nodded, her crimson hair flowing around her like living flame as the wind picked up. Yes, but remember, our priority is locating and securing the bearer. Kokabeel is beyond our ability to defeat directly. We can at least slow him down, the black-haired girl suggested, pulling what looked like a wooden staff from seemingly nowhere. Perhaps, Xenovia, Rias acknowledged. But do not engage unnecessarily. None of you, she added, looking pointedly at Akino, whose smile had taken on a distinctly unsettling quality. As you wish, President, Akino replied, though the gl. In her eye suggested she might interpret those orders rather liberally given the opportunity. Rias turned back toward the direction Kaneko had indicated, her expression resolute. The House of Grimoire moves now to secure its future. Let us find this bearer before our enemies do. With that, the group moved forward into the night, unaware that elsewhere in Bellwood, a blue and black blur was racing toward the same destination. Guided by an artifact of impossible power and equally impossible origins, the convergence had begun. XLR-8 raced through the streets of Bellwood, a streak of motion barely visible to human eyes. The Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed against his right wrist, somehow maintaining contact with his alien form despite the transformation, feeding him information about his target's location. The Eastern Industrial District loomed ahead, abandoned warehouses and manufacturing plants creating a concrete maze illuminated by sporadic flashes of lightning. As Ben approached, he felt the air change, becoming charged with energy that made his Kinesolaran skin tingle uncomfortably. He skidded to a halt atop a water tower, his tail providing balance as he surveyed the area. The Seraphim Omnitrix projected its holographic display again, highlighting a massive energy signature in a clearing between warehouses. There, hovering 20 feet above the ground, was the being Ben assumed must be Kokobile. The figure matched the projection he'd seen earlier, humanoid in overall shape, but with 6 wings of midnight black extending from its back. Armor that might once have been brilliant. Luminous was now corroded with darkness, and in one hand, it held a spear of light that pulsed with barely contained energy. "Found you," XLR-8 muttered. As if hearing him despite the distance, Kokobile turned, golden eyes fixing directly on Ben's position. A smile spread across the fallen angel's face, a smile with too many teeth, too sharp, too hungry. "And you," Kokobile's voice boomed, carrying impossible distances. "Bearer of the Seraphim, how convenient that you should deliver yourself to me so promptly." XLR-8 tensed, ready to move. "Yeah, customer service is kind of my thing. Though usually I'm delivering beatdowns. Not myself." The fallen angel laughed, the sound like breaking glass and distant thunder. "Amusing. Your species always resorts to humor in the face of the divine. Even fallen divinity. Actually, I'm just naturally hilarious," Ben replied, buying time as he assessed his opponent. The Seraphim Omnitrix was feeding him data, power levels, weaknesses, combat capabilities, but it was coming in faster than he could process. Kokobile descended slowly, his wings casting shadows that seemed too deep, too substantial. "The Seraphim interface has bonded with you, a human. How disappointing. Such power wasted on such a fragile vessel. You'd be surprised how unfragile I can be," Ben said, tapping the symbol on his chest. In a flash of green light, XLR-8 was replaced by Diamondhead, the crystalline Petrosapian form reflecting the lightning flashes. "See, not so fragile now." Kokobile's eyes narrowed, genuine surprise crossing his features. "Interesting. You possess the ability to transform your physical form. That was not in our intelligence reports." Diamondhead formed his arm into a crystalline blade. "Yeah, well, your intelligence could use some work. I've been transforming into aliens for years. The Seraphim thing is actually the new addition." "Aliens," Kokobile repeated, as if tasting the word. Of course, this dimension's supernatural influence was suppressed, leaving it open to extraterrestrial contact instead. He smiled again, that too wide, too sharp expression. "No matter. Whatever your capabilities, the Seraphim interface belongs in worthy hands. Mine, specifically." The fallen angel moved with blinding speed, his spear of light thrust forward like a missile. Diamondhead barely had time to raise his crystalline arm, deflecting He blow with a shower of sparks and a sound like church bells being struck. "Not bad," Kokobile acknowledged. "But merely delaying the inevitable." He struck again, and again, each blow faster than the last. Diamondhead countered, his crystalline body absorbing or deflecting the attacks, but Ben quickly realized he was being driven back, unable to mount an effective offense. "The problem with defense," Kokobile commented casually, as if they were having a friendly sparring match, "is that eventually, you make a mistake." As if to prove his point, the next thrust slipped past Diamondhead's guard, the spear of light scoring a deep gouge across his chest. Ben grunted in pain. "Not severe," as the Petrosapian form was highly resistant to damage, but enough to know that this opponent was more dangerous than most he had faced. And when you make that mistake, Kokobeel continued, pressing his advantage, I will take what is rightfully mine. The Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed on Ben's wrist, and suddenly, knowledge flooded his mind. Combat techniques specifically effective against celestial beings, the structural weaknesses in corrupted divine armor, the precise frequency at which light energy could be reflected back upon its wielder. Acting on this new information, Diamond Head altered the crystalline structure of his body, adjusting its refractive properties. When Kokobeel's next strike came, instead of deflecting the spear, Ben captured its light energy within his crystalline form, channeled it through his internal lattice, and released it back as a concentrated beam from his opposite hand. The redirected energy caught Kokobeel squarely in the chest, shattering a section of his corrupted armor and sending him tumbling backward through the air. How did you? The fallen angel began, a newing alarm in his voice for the first time. Like I said, Diamond Head replied, his crystalline face somehow managing to convey a smirk, you'd be surprised what I can do. Kokobeel's expression darkened, the air around him beginning to crackle with energy. Parlor tricks. Let us see how you fare against the full might of a fallen exarch. The 6 wings on his back extended fully, each feather harpening into what looked like blades of darkness. The spear in his hand split into 2, then 4, then 8, each duplicate orbiting around him in a deadly constellation. Okay, Ben muttered to himself, that's probably not good. The Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed again, more urgently this time, projecting not just data but an actual message, current form insufficient. Celestial template required. Yeah, I figured that out. Ben replied under his breath. But the hooded guy said not to use it again until calibration was complete. Calibration accelerated by proximity to celestial entity, the device responded. Transformation now viable. Before Ben could decide whether to risk it, Kokobeel attacked. All 8 light spears launched simultaneously, followed by a barrage of feather blades from his wings. Diamond Head created a crystalline shield, reinforcing it with every technique he knew, but the combined assault shattered it like glass. The impact sent Ben flying backward, crashing through the wall of an abandoned warehouse. His Petrosapian form absorbed much of the damage, but he could feel cracks forming throughout his crystalline body. Okay, he groaned, pushing himself up from the debris. Celestial template it is. He reached for the Seraphim Omnitrix, which had begun to glow with increasing intensity. The moment his fingers touched its surface, both watches activated simultaneously, the original Omnitrix and the Seraphim device synchronizing in a way that sent waves of green and gold energy coursing through Ben's body. The transformation was unlike any he had experienced before. It didn't simply replace his DNA with an alien template, it seemed to expand it, enhance it, elevate it to something beyond physical limitations. When the light faded, Ben once again found himself in the form he had instinctively named Luminous, but now with greater awareness of its capabilities. His body radiated golden light, 4 wings of pure energy extending from his back. Symbols see me. Lar to those on the Seraphim Omnitrix circled his forearms and chest, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. His perception had expanded dramatically. He could see energy flows, dimensional weaknesses, corrupted divine essence that constituted Kokobeel's being. The fallen angel hovered at the edge of the destroyed warehouse wall, his expression a mixture of rage and, surprisingly, fear. A seraph form, he hissed. Impossible. No human vessel should be able to contain such power without disintegrating. Ben, luminous, rose into the air, the wings of energy adjusting to maintain his balance without conscious thought. Maybe I'm not just any human vessel. Kokobeel's fear quickly hardened back into determination. It changes nothing. Nascent power, uncontrolled and undisciplined, is no match for experience. He launched another barrage of light spears, but this time, Ben didn't need to dodge or block. With a gesture, he created a field of energy that simply absorbed the weapons, their light joining his own. Thanks for the power boost, Luminous said, genuinely surprised at how easy it had been. Want to try again, or should we call it a day? Kokobeel snarled, abandoning ranged attacks for direct confrontation. He charged forward, darkness swirling around his fists, wings spread wide to encompass Ben in their deadly embrace. Acting on instinct, or perhaps knowledge provided by the Say, Seraphim transformation. Ben met the charge head-on. As they collided, he channeled energy through his palms, meeting corruption with purification, darkness with light. The resulting explosion sent shock waves throughout the industrial district, shattering windows for blocks in every direction. When the dust settled, both combatants hovered amid the destruction, neither having gained a decisive advantage. "You are stronger than anticipated," Kokabeel admitted grudgingly. "But still untrained, unaware of what you truly wield." "I'm a fast learner," Ben replied, though he could feel the strain of maintaining the Seraphim form beginning to take its toll. Unlike his alien transformations, which were limited mainly by the Omnitrix's timing function, this form seemed to draw directly on his own life energy. Kokabeel must have sensed his fatigue. "Yes, but will you learn quickly enough?" He gathered darkness between his hands, compressing it into a sphere of void-like energy. This battle was merely a test, the opening move in a game that spans dimensions. Remember that when you're picking up the pieces. Before Ben could respond, Kokabeel hurled the sphere, not at him, but at the ground below. It detonated with concussive force, cratering the earth and sending a shockwave upward that caught Ben off guard. By the time he regained his stability, the fallen angel was already retreating, a tear in reality opening before him. "We will meet again, bearer," Kokabeel called over his shoulder. "When the stakes are higher and the board more fully arranged." He disappeared through the dimensional rift, which sealed itself with a thunderclap, leaving Ben alone amid the destruction. The Seraphim form flickered, the strain of maintaining it finally becoming too much. In a flash of golden light, Ben reverted to human form. Dropping to one knee on the cracked pavement, breathing heavily. "Well," he muttered to himself, "that could have gone better." The Seraphim Omnitrix on his wrist pulsed once, then settled into a steady, soft glow. The original Omnitrix, meanwhile, beeped in its familiar pattern, indicating it was recharging after the transformation. Ben was still catching his breath when he heard footsteps approaching, multiple sets, moving with purpose. He looked up to see a group of 5 people entering the devastated clearing, led by a young woman with crimson hair that seemed to flow like liquid fire in the night breeze. "Benjamin Tennyson," she said, her voice carrying a similar accent to Grayfia's, but lighter, less ancient. "Bearer of the Omnitrix, and now the Seraphim interface as well." She offered a slight bow, formal but not subservient. "I am Rias Grimory, heiress of the House of Grimory. We've come to offer our assistance, and our alliance." Ben rose slowly to his feet, eyeing the newcomers warily. "Your demons," he said, not a question but a statement. The Seraphim Omnitrix had provided that knowledge the moment they appeared. Rias nodded, seemingly impressed. "Yes, though we prefer the term devils in your language. Less theological and loaded, you might say." The bespectacled woman beside her stepped forward. "You've just faced Kokabeel, a fallen angel of considerable power, and fought him to a standstill. Most impressive for a human, even one with your unique abilities." "Thanks," Ben replied cautiously. Though standstill might be generous. "Pretty sure he was just testing me." "Undoubtedly," Rias agreed. "Kokabeel is known for his patience and strategy, unusual among the fallen. He would not commit fully to a battle without understanding his opponent's capabilities." Ben glanced down at the Seraphim Omnitrix, then back at the group before him. "Grayfia mentioned the Grimory clan would reach out. I'm guessing that's you." Rias's eyebrows rose slightly. "You've met Grayfia already. Interesting. She is married to my brother, Searsex Lucifer, one of the 4 great Satans who rule the underworld." "Right," Ben said, fighting the surreal feeling of discussing demon politics as if it were perfectly normal. "And why exactly would demons, devils, want to ally with me?" "Because," Rias replied, her expression growing serious. "What Kokabeel seeks threatens all realms, not just yours or ours. The Seraphim interface you now bear is one of 4 cosmic keystones created to maintain the boundaries between dimensions. If he acquires it and the others—" "Let me guess," Ben interrupted, "bad things happen." "The complete collapse of all dimensional barriers," the blonde young man supplied. "Chaos beyond imagining as incompatible realities merge. The end of all things, essentially," added the black-haired woman with the ponytail, her tone disturbingly matter-of-fact. "Great," Ben sighed. "Another Tuesday." another apocalypse to prevent. Before the conversation could continue, the sound of screeching tires announced the arrival of Kevin's car, skidding to a halt at the edge of the destruction. Gwen leapt out before the vehicle had fully stopped, her hands already glowing with mana as she assessed the situation. "Ben," she called, running forward, then stopping short as she noticed the group standing with her cousin. "Friends of yours?" "Not exactly," Ben replied. "Gwen, meet Rias Grimori and company. They're devils from the underworld, apparently here to help us stop the dimensional apocalypse that Seraphim Omnitrix is somehow involved in." Kevin emerged from the car, his hand already absorbing the metal of the vehicle's frame in preparation for combat. "Devils, as in pitchforks and horns, buying souls at the crossroads." The white-haired girl, Kaneko, gave Kevin a flat look. "Racist stereotypes," she said simply. "My apologies for the dramatic entrance," Rias said smoothly, addressing Gwen and Kevin. "But events are moving more quickly than anticipated. The convergence of dimensions has begun, and the bearer," she nodded toward Ben, "requires protection and guidance while he masters the Seraphim's power." Gwen moved to stand beside Ben, her stance protective but not overtly hostile. "And you're offering this protection out of the goodness of your demonic hearts." "Self-interest," Rias corrected, with refreshing honesty. "If Kokobel or his allies acquire the Seraphim interface, all realms suffer equally. The House of Grimori prefers existence to non-existence." "Hard to argue with that logic," Kevin commented, though he maintained his metallic armor. Ben looked from the devils to his cousin and friend, then down at the two devices on his wrists, the familiar Omnitrix that had defined so much of his life, and the new Seraphim interface that promised to redefine it further. "Okay," he said finally. "I'm listening. Tell me everything you know about this convergence, these keystones, and what exactly Kokobel is planning." Rias nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Perhaps somewhere less destroyed. Your world has establishments called diners that serve coffee at all hours." "Yes. I find such places conducive to strategic discussions." Ben couldn't help but laugh at the incongruity of it all. Alien watch, angelic device, demons suggesting coffee, and strategy sessions like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Sure," he agreed. "There's a place called the Burger Shack that's open late. Best smoothies in Bellwood, though I can't vouch for their coffee." As the unlikely group made their way toward Kevin's car, which was definitely not designed to transport 9 people, Ben felt the Seraphim Omnitrix pulse against his wrist, almost like a heartbeat. Whatever this convergence was, whatever role he was meant to play in it, one thing was certain: his life had just become even more complicated than usual. And considering his usual regular alien invasions and the occasional time travel incident, that was saying something. Chapter 2. Realms Beyond. The fluorescent lights of Burger Shack buzzed overhead, casting an unnatural glow over the most unusual gathering the late-night establishment had ever hosted. Wedged into the largest corner booth, Ben Tennyson found himself sandwiched between his cousin Gwen and Rias Grimori, self-proclaimed devil heiress whose crimson hair seemed almost unnaturally vivid even under the harsh lighting. "So let me get this straight," Kevin said, absently molding a spoon between his fingers, having absorbed its metal earlier. "There are 4 of these cosmic keystones, the Seraphim whatever is one of them, and this Kokobel guy wants to collect them all like they're trading cards." Rias sipped her coffee, black, no sugar, and nodded. "The cosmic keystones were created during the Great War between angels, fallen angels, and devils. They were designed to stabilize reality after the death of the biblical God left the dimensional boundaries weakened." Ben nearly choked on his smoothie. "I'm sorry, God is dead. Like, the actual God. Many gods exist across the dimensions," Akano, Rias's black-haired vice president, explained with a serene smile that somehow made the statement even more unsettling. "The biblical God was among the most powerful, but yes, he fell during the Great War. The knowledge was kept from humans to prevent complications." "That's one way of putting it," Gwen muttered, her fingers tracing protective sigils on her napkin out of habit. The petite white-haired girl, Kaneko, reached across the table for her 5th burger. "World religions are built on incomplete information," she stated flatly between bites. "Humans only see fragments of reality. Ben glanced down at the two devices adorning his wrists, the familiar Omnitrix and the new Seraphim interface, its golden blue surface occasionally shifting like liquid metal. And these keystones maintain what's left of those boundaries. Precisely. Rias confirmed. The Seraphim interface is specifically attuned to angelic energy. The others govern demonic power, natural magic, and cosmic forces respectively. And if someone collects all four? Ben pressed. Rias's expression darkened. They could reshape reality itself, merge dimensions, create new ones, or destroy everything entirely. Kevin whistled low. So basically standard Tuesday for Team Tennyson. The blonde devil, Kiba, leaned forward with graceful precision. You speak of universe-ending threats with remarkable casualness, he observed. His perfect features arranged in a curious expression. You should see us on Wednesdays, Ben replied with a half-smile. That's when the time travelers usually show up. Gwen kicked him under the table. What my cousin means is that we've dealt with serious threats before. The hybrid invasion, Egregor, Diagon, Maltruant, entities capable of universal destruction. Fascinating, Rias murmured, studying Ben with new interest. Your reputation in the supernatural community was known to us, but details were sparse. The dimensional separation limited information flow. I have a reputation among demons. Ben couldn't help asking. Devils, corrected Kiba politely. Among certain circles, Rias clarified. Those who monitor dimensional anomalies. Your activities with the original Omnitrix, registered as disturbances, echoes across the barriers. The bespectacled girl, Sona, who joined them after addressing some matter with her own group of devils, adjusted her glasses with precise movements. The Grimoire clan has maintained an interest in your world specifically because of these disturbances. We suspected they might eventually lead to what we're now experiencing. Ben's phone buzzed, interrupting the conversation. It's Grandpa Max, he said, checking the screen. The plumbers have contained the smaller dimensional breaches, but they want us at headquarters ASAP. Plumbers. Zenobia, the blue-haired sword wielder, questioned with visible confusion. You require maintenance workers at this juncture. Kevin snorted. Not that kind of plumber. More the intergalactic law enforcement kind. Rias set her coffee cup down with deliberate grace. We should accompany you. If these plumbers are monitoring the dimensional breaches, our knowledge will be valuable. Ben exchanged glances with Gwen and Kevin. After a moment, Gwen nodded slightly, her subtle signal that she sensed no immediate deception from the devils. All right, Ben decided, but fair warning, they're probably going to have a lot of questions about the whole, we're actual devils from the literal underworld, thing. Sona's lips curved in the barest hint of a smile. We're quite accustomed to skepticism, Tennyson-san. As they gathered themselves to leave, Ben noticed Rias watching him with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. Something wrong? He asked. Not wrong, she replied thoughtfully. I'm simply reevaluating. The bearer of the Seraphim was prophesied to be a bridge between worlds. I had not expected someone so dashingly handsome, Ben suggested with a playful grin. Rias's aquamarine eyes sparkled with amusement. I was going to say, unpretentious. Most beings granted cosmic power develop certain attitudes. Oh, he's got attitude, Gwen interjected, gathering her things. Just wait until he starts naming his transformations out loud. Kevin's car could not possibly transport their entire group, so they split up. Kevin, Gwen, Ben, and Rias in one vehicle, while the rest of the devils transported themselves using what Akino called teleportation circles. As they drove toward the hidden plumber base, Ben found himself studying Rias from the corner of his eye. Despite her otherworldly origins, there was something profoundly genuine about her, a directness in her gaze, a certainty in her movements. You have questions, she stated rather than asked, catching him looking. About 1 million, Ben admitted, starting with why the heiress to a demon, devil, noble house is personally involving herself in this situation. Don't you have underlings for dangerous fieldwork? A smile played at the corners of her lips. My underlings, as you call them, are my precious family. Where I go, they follow, and where trouble threatens the Grimoire interests, I lead. Family, Gwen asked from the front seat. I thought they were your, what was it called? Peerage, Rias supplied. A devil tradition. High-class devils can reincarnate other beings into devils using special artifacts called evil pieces. They become part of our household, gaining power and protection in exchange for service. Kevin's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Sounds like slavery. Rias's expression cooled. In some houses, perhaps it resembles that. The Grimoire have always valued love over power. My peerage members are my family, not my servants, though tradition dictates certain formalities. Ben studied her face, finding only sincerity. And what are the Grimoire family's interests in this situation? Survival, primarily, Rias answered with disarming frankness. But also stability. The House of Grimoire oversees territories in the human world, this city included, and maintains peaceful relations with other factions. Kokabeel seeks to restart the Great War. That benefits no one. The Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed gently on Ben's wrist, as if responding to the mention of war. He still hadn't fully adjusted to its presence, the way it seemed almost sentient, feeding him informa. Cheon and responding to his thoughts in ways even the original Omnitrix never had. "We're here," Kevin announced, pulling into what appeared to be an ordinary plumbing supply store, the decades-old cover for the plumber base beneath. Inside, Magister Tennyson, Ben's grandfather Max, was coordinating response teams when they arrived. His weathered face registered only mild surprise at the devils accompanying his grandson. "Extraterrestrial visitors?" he asked. "Ever practical." "Extra-dimensional," Ben corrected. "Grandpa, meet Rias Grimoire. She's a devil, like, an actual devil from the literal underworld." Max Tennyson extended his hand without hesitation. "Max Tennyson, Magister of Earth's Plumber Division. We've had limited contact with parallel dimensions before, but never established diplomatic relations with the underworld. Was it?" Rias shook his hand, her formal manners slipping effortlessly into diplomatic mode. "The dimensional barriers have prevented significant contact until now. The convergence has changed that, for better or worse." The rest of Rias's peerage materialized in a flash of crimson light, startling several plumber agents who immediately raised weapons. "Stand down," Max ordered sharply. Then addressed the newcomers. "I appreciate your willingness to share information, but I'd prefer advance notice before teleportation within a secure facility." Sona stepped forward with a respectful bow. "My apologies, Magister Tennyson. I am Sona Citri, heiress to the House of Citri. Our customs differ regarding security protocols." Max nodded, his expression remaining open but cautious. "Let's move this to the Situation Room. I have a feeling we'll need maps and data displays for what you're about to tell us." The plumber headquarters hummed with activity as they made their way through the facility. Ben noticed the devils taking everything in with varying degrees of interest, Sona examining the technology with analytical precision, Kaneko seemingly indifferent. Akano smiling at the nervous glances from plumber agents. In the Situation Room, holographic displays showed the locations of dimensional breaches across not just Bellwood but the entire planet. Dozens of points pulsed with light, concentrated primarily in areas of mystical significance or near ley lines. "The incursions are increasing exponentially," Rook Blanco, Ben's partner, reported as they entered. He paused momentarily at the sight of the devils before continuing with professional composure. "We have contained 17 minor breaches, but new ones are appearing faster than we can respond. It's the early stage of convergence," Rias explained, approaching the holographic display with the confidence of someone accustomed to strategic planning. "The barriers between dimensions are thinning. Soon, larger entities will begin crossing over, not just scouts like those you've encountered so far." Max's expression remained steady, though the lines around his eyes deepened. "We're spread thin already. If this escalates as you suggest, you will need allies," Sona finished for him. "Specifically, allies familiar with supernatural entities and their weaknesses. Which is why we're here," Rias added. "The House of Grimoire offers assistance." Max studied her for a long moment. "In my experience, help rarely comes without strings attached." Rias's lips curved into a slight smile. "Wise caution. Our interest is primarily in the Seraphim interface," she nodded toward Ben's wrist, and ensuring it remains out of Kokabeel's hands. "Beyond that, stability serves everyone." "What exactly is the Seraphim interface?" Max asked, turning to Ben. "Your report mentioned a second Omnitrix-like device, but details were sparse." Ben held up his right wrist, where the golden blue device pulsed with gentle light. It's one of 4 cosmic keystones that maintain the boundaries between dimensions. Apparently, when the biblical god died, which is still messing with my head, by the way, reality needed some patching up. The death of a primordial creator deity leaves ripples, Akino explained with delicate understatement. The keystones were created to prevent total dimensional collapse. Max took this revelation with remarkable composure, though Ben noticed his grandfather's hand unconsciously move toward the cross he'd worn since Verdona's departure. And this Kokobile wants to see. I'll elect these keystones to cause precisely that collapse. Not exactly, Rias clarified. Kokobile was once an angel of war. He desires conflict, specifically, a new war between the 3 biblical factions. By destabilizing reality, he forces all sides to mobilize. In the chaos, he believes the fallen angels can emerge dominant. Great, Gwen muttered, a warmongering angel with apocalyptic aspirations. Definitely Tuesday. The Seraphim Omnitrix suddenly projected a holographic display, startling everyone present. The projection showed a 3-dimensional map of ley lines, dimensional weak points, and energy signatures, far more detailed than the plumber's system. That's impressive, Max admitted, studying the display. It's showing something else, Ben said, noticing patterns emerging in the data. These energy signatures, they're converging toward specific points. Sona stepped closer, adjusting her glasses as she analyzed the projection. 4 points of convergence. The cosmic keystones are calling to each other. Which means what, exactly? Kevin asked, voicing everyone's question. It means, came a new voice from the doorway, that we're all royally screwed unless Wonder Bee Oi here figures out how to use that thing properly. Everyone turned to see a young woman with silver white hair and striking violet eyes leaning against the doorframe. She wore a purple coat over a black corset, fingerless gloves, and an expression of studied nonchalance that didn't quite mask her tension. Charmcaster, Gwen said, instantly moving into a defensive stance, mana gathering around her hands. It's hope now, the woman corrected with a casual wave. And you can put the light show away, Gwendolyn. If I wanted to attack, I wouldn't announce myself first. Ben stepped forward, his hand hovering over the original Omnitrix. How did you get in here? Hope, formerly Charmcaster, rolled her eyes. Please, your plumber security is built to stop aliens, not magic users. I walked right Hero the dimensional pockets in your defense grid. She looked toward the devils, nodding slightly. Though I see I'm not the only one who's noticed the walls between worlds are paper thin these days. Rias studied the newcomer with narrowed eyes. You're a sorceress, but your magic feels different. Legerdemain, Hope replied, pushing off from the doorframe and sauntering into the room. Why magic comes from the dimension of magic itself. Which, incidentally, is why I'm here. She focused on Ben. That fancy new watch you're sporting. It's causing massive disruptions in magical energy flows. The alpha runes are going haywire. Reality is developing hiccups, and my father's library started rearranging itself alphabetically instead of by cosmic significance. Wait, Ben interjected, trying to process this information. You're saying the Seraphim Omnitrix is affecting Legerdemain too? Hope approached him without hesitation, grabbing his wrist to examine the device. Ben tensed but allowed it, noticing that the Seraphim interface didn't react defensively as he'd expected. Omnitrix, Hope repeated with a raised eyebrow. That's not what this is, Tennyson. This is much older, much more powerful, and much more dangerous. She traced a finger over the shifting symbols. This is a fragment of creation itself, repurposed as a control mechanism. The sorceress is correct, Sona confirmed, her analytical tone giving the statement additional weight. The keystones were created from remnants of the biblical god's power, literally pieces of divine creative force. Max cleared his throat. I think we need to back up. Hope, he acknowledged her preferred name smoothly, what exactly brought you here? Your relationship with my grandchildren has been contentious. Hope's EXPR. Eshin flickered between several emotions before settling into resignation. Look, I'm not here for a reunion tour. I'm here because Legerdemain is collapsing in on itself, and the trail of disruption led straight to Bellwood, specifically. To whatever cosmic rearranging Tennyson is involved in now. We should compare notes, Rias suggested diplomatically. Your knowledge of this, Legerdemain may provide insights we lack. Hope studied the devil with open curiosity. You're not from around here, are you? Your magical signature is infernal. Old school infernal, not the cheap imitations I've encountered before. Rias Grimory, heiress of the House of Grimory, she introduced herself with regal composure. And you're right, we're devils from the underworld dimension. Devils, angels, cosmic keystones, Hope listed with growing exasperation. And naturally, Tennyson is in the middle of it all. Some things never change. Despite the tension, Ben found himself smiling. Good to see you too, Hope. She shot him a glare that lacked her former malice. Don't get sentimental on me. I'm here to save my home, not join your little hero squad. And yet, Gwen observed quietly, here you are. Before Hope could retort, the Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed more insistently, its projection expanding to show a new disturbance, larger than any previous breach, forming directly above Bellwood. That's not good, Ben muttered, reading the data streaming across the holographic display. Whatever's coming through, it's big. Not just big, Rias said, her expression grave. That signature, it's Kokobile. He's returning, and bringing reinforcements. Max immediately activated the command center's communication system. All plumbers to alert status. Level 1 dimensional incursion in progress over downtown Bellwood. Evacuation protocol Sierra in effect. Ben turned to Rias. How many reinforcements are we talking about? Fallen angels follow a military hierarchy, Kiba explained. If Kokobile is leading a formal incursion rather than a scouting mission. Dozens, at minimum, Akano finished, her normally playful demeanor replaced by cold assessment. Possibly hundreds if he's mobilized his full garrison. Ben looked at the two devices on his wrists, then at the gathering of humans, aliens, devils, and a sorceress from another dimension. An unlikely alliance, but perhaps exactly what was needed. We need to stop them before they fully materialize, he decided. Hit the breach point directly. That's suicide, Hope objected. Dimensional tiers are wildly unstable. Getting CLOs enough to affect it would require power on par with what's causing it. The Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed, as if offering a solution. Or power designed specifically to stabilize dimensions, Ben countered, raising his wrist. That's what this thing is for, right? Maintaining the boundaries. Sona adjusted her glasses, calculations visibly running behind her eyes. Theoretically, yes, but without proper training in its use. I'm a quick study, Ben replied with a confidence born of years facing impossible odds. And I've got something Kokobile doesn't. Remarkable luck, Rias suggested with the hint of a smile. That, Ben acknowledged, and all of you. He looked around at the assembled group. Different skills, different backgrounds, different types of power, but all aimed at the same goal. Max nodded, pride evident despite his concern. Ben's right. We need to coordinate our response. Ms. Grimory, can your people engage the fallen angels directly? Yes, though not indefinitely against superior numbers. Rias confirmed. My peerage specializes in varied combat applications. Gwen, Hope, Ben turned to the magic users. Can you work together to contain the dimensional breach? Keep it from expanding. The two women exchanged wary glances before Gwen nodded reluctantly. Our magical styles are different, but complementary. It's possible. Definitely, Hope affirmed with unexpected conviction. Gwendolyn's structured approach combined with my raw power could create an effective containment matrix. Kevin, Rook, Ben continued, you're with me as backup. I'll attempt to use the Seraphim interface to seal the breach, but if that fails or if Kokobile targets me directly. We've got your back, Kevin confirmed, already absorbing metal from a nearby console. Plumber, teams will coordinate evacuation and perimeter security, Max added, pulling up city maps. If we can't contain this, our priority is civilian safety. Rias stepped forward, her crimson hair seeming to float on unseen currents of power. The House of Grimory stands with you, Ben Tennyson. My peerage will engage the fallen angels and create the opening you need. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition, a connection. A shared understanding of leadership and responsibility. Ben nodded, acknowledging both her offer and the unspoken weight behind it. Let's move, he ordered. The unusual alliance sprang into action. The breach hung above Bellwood like a wound in reality, crackling with crimson and black energy that cast unnatural shadows across the evacuating city. From their position on a skyscraper rooftop, Ben could see the first fallen angels beginning to emerge, dark wings spread against the night sky, weapons of light clutched in their hands. Kokobil's advance guard, Rias identified. Her devil wings now extended from her back, leathery but somehow elegant, matching her crimson hair. They're securing the perimeter for his arrival. Ben studied the breach through the Seraphim Omnitrix's enhanced perceptions. The device fed him information about structural weaknesses, energy flows, and optimal intervention points. I need to get closer, he determined. Right to the center of that thing. I can teleport you, Akeno offered, lightning crackling between her fingers. Though maintaining position will be difficult in those energy currents. Ben cycled through the alien roster on his original Omnitrix. I'll handle that part, just get me in range. Nearby, Gwen and Hope had already begun their containment spell, their magics intertwining in a surprise. Singly harmonious pattern. Gwen's structured mana forming precise geometric patterns while Hope's raw magical energy flowed through them like water through channels. Ben, Gwen called, not breaking her concentration, be careful. That breach is putting out levels of energy I've never seen before. When am I not careful? He replied with a grin that earned him synchronized eye rolls from both sorceresses. Kevin, his body now covered in dense metal armor, clapped a hand on Ben's shoulder. Remember the Vilgax incident, or the time loop disaster, or the Onimo Zoo breakout, or, okay, point made, Ben conceded. I'll be extra careful this time. Rook checked his proto-tool one final time. The plumbers are in position, Ben dude. Magister Tennyson has established evacuation corridors to the south and west. Rias gathered her peerage with subtle gestures. We will engage the fallen angels and draw Kokobil's attention. When you see the opening, move quickly, we won't be able to hold them long. The gravity of the situation settled over Ben. Despite his years of experience, the stakes felt different this time. Not just Earth or even the universe, but the very fabric of multiple realities hanging in the balance. Everyone clear on the plan? He asked, receiving determined nods all around. Then let's do this. Rias led her peerage into the air, devil wings carrying them toward the emerging fallen angels. The clash was immediate and spectacular, Akeno's lightning cutting through the night sky, Kiba's swords multiplying in impossible patterns, Kaneko hurling debris with inhuman strength. Xenovia wielding a sword that seemed to cut through reality itself. That's our cue, Ben said, activating the Omnitrix. In a flash of green light, he transformed into Jetre, the aerodynamic arrow. Phibian form perfect for aerial maneuverability. Ready when you are, Tennyson, Hope called, one hand maintaining her part of the containment spell while the other prepared a transportation charm. Do it, Jetre confirmed. Hope's magic enveloped him in violet light, and suddenly Ben was hurtling through space, directly toward the heart of the dimensional breach. The transition was disorienting, one moment on the rooftop, the next in the midst of chaos. Inside the breach, physics behaved differently. Gravity pulled from multiple directions simultaneously. Light bent around impossible angles. Sound arrived before its source. Through Jetre's enhanced senses, Ben could perceive fragments of the underworld on the other side, glimpses of impossible architecture and crimson skies. A squad of fallen angels noticed his arrival, breaking off from their battle with Rias's group to intercept him. Jetre dodged their light spears with practiced agility, firing neuroshock blasts from his tail and eyes to create space. Tennyson, Kokobil's voice boomed from deeper within the breach, where his form was beginning to materialize. Did you truly believe I would come unprepared a second time? Jetre didn't waste breath responding, instead focusing on reaching the center of the breach. The Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed urgently against his transformed wrist, somehow maintaining contact despite his alien form. A light spear grazed his wing, sending him into a momentary spin. Before he could recover, 3 more fallen angels converged on his position, weapons ready. Suddenly, a blast of concentrated destruction magic scattered them, followed by Rias herself flying into view. Go, she commanded, her power creating a momentary corridor. We'll hold them off. Jetre nodded gratefully and surged forward. As he approached the heart of the breach, the Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed more rapidly, its surface shifting like quicksilver. Ben understood instinctively that he needed to change forms. Jetre's abilities weren't suited for what came next. Touching down on a fragment of solid reality floating in the breach, he transformed again, this time activating both devices simultaneously. The fusion of energies washed over him, once again creating the luminous form, the celestial transformation powered by the Seraphim interface. Immediately, his perception expanded. He could see the breach for what it truly was, not just a hole between dimensions but a fundamental disruption in the cosmic architecture, the underlying mathematical structure of reality itself fraying at the edges. Impressive, Kabil's voice came again as the fallen angel fully materialized within the breach, his 6 wings spread wide, armor now fully restored after their previous battle. You've already learned to access the Seraphim form. But can you use it? Ben, luminous, raised his hands, where energy gathered in response to his will. Let's find out. He directed the energy not at Kabil but at the breach itself, tempting to knit together the torn fabric of reality. The Seraphim Omnitrix guided his efforts, providing the knowledge his human mind couldn't possibly contain about dimensional mechanics and cosmic stability. Kabil laughed, the sound distorted by the breach's strange acoustics. You think it's so simple? The convergence has already begun. These pathways were established by powers beyond your comprehension. Maybe, Ben acknowledged, continuing his work even as he spoke, but I've got something you don't. And what might that be? Kabil asked condescendingly. Experience improvising, Ben replied. Then abruptly shifted his approach. Instead of trying to close the breach directly, he began using the Seraphim's power to stabilize its edges, creating a controlled framework rather than forcing it closed. The breach responded, its wild fluctuations settling into a more predictable pattern. Outside the breach, he sensed Gwen and Hope's containment spell adapting to his approach, our magic reinforcing the stability he was creating from within. The combination was working, slowly but surely bringing the dimensional tear under control. Kabil's amusement faded as he realized what was happening. Clever, but futile. He gestured sharply, and a dozen fallen angels disengaged from battles with Rias's peerage to converge on Ben's position. From below, Kevin's voice called out, Ben, company coming. Ben didn't need the warning. The Seraphim form's enhanced perception had already alerted him to the approaching threat. But dealing with them while maintaining his work on the breach would be impossible. As if in answer to this dilemma, a surge of violet energy erupted from below, forming a barrier between Ben and the oncoming fallen angels. Hope stood on a floating platform of pure magical energy, her eyes glowing white, hands directing waves of power. Keep going, Tennyson, she shouted. I'll handle the winged fashion disasters. Nearby, Gwen had altered their containment spell to compensate for Hope's divided attention, her mana constructs growing more complex to maintain coverage. Kabil snarled in frustration and charged directly at Ben, abandoning subtlety for brute force. Give me the Seraphim interface, human. Ben met the charge with a shield of celestial energy. The collision sent shockwaves through the breach, temporarily destabilizing his work. Not happening, feathers. They exchanged blows within the heart of the breach, each impact rippling through multiple dimensions. Kabil's experience showed, his attacks precisely targeted weak points in Ben's defenses, forcing him to divide attention between combat and maintaining his work on the breach. You cannot win this, human, Kabil taunted, landing a strike that sent Ben tumbling through the distorted space. The Seraphim form drains your life force with every moment. I can sense your reserves depleting. He was right. Unlike Ben's alien transformations, which drew power from the Omnitrix itself, the Seraphim form seemed to channel energy through him, using his own vitality as a conduit. Already he could feel the strain, a bone-deep fatigue unlike normal exhaustion. But the breach was nearly stabilized. Just a few more moments. Summoning his remaining strength, Ben created a pulse of pure celestial energy that momentarily blinded Kabil. In that instant, he completed the stabilization framework, locking the dimensional tear into a controlled state, not closed, but no longer expanding. Now, he shouted to Gwen and Hope. Outside, the two sorceresses unleashed their combined spell, a complex working that anchored Ben's framework to the material world, preventing further deterioration. The breach's wild energy settled into a steady hum, its borders now clearly defined rather than jagged and unpredictable. Kabil recovered from the flash, his expression darkening as he realized what had been accomplished. You've stabilized it, not closed it. The convergence continues. But on our terms now, Ben replied, though the effort of speaking was becoming difficult as his energy reserves depleted. Not yours. The fallen angel's wings spread wider, darkness gathering around him. Then I will simply take the Seraphim by force and continue elsewhere. He lunged forward with renewed fury, but before he could reach Ben, a crimson blast of destruction magic struck him from behind. Rias hovered at the edge of the breach, her power manifested around her in a deadly aura. Your forces are retreating, Kokobile, she announced. Stand down or face the consequences. The consequences. Kokobile laughed bitterly. Child, you have no concept of the forces you're opposing. This was merely the first move in a much larger game. He turned back to Ben, who was struggling to maintain the Seraphim form. Remember this moment, bearer. Remember that you've merely delayed the inevitable. With a gesture that seemed to tear through reality itself, Kokobile created a secondary portal within the breach and disappeared through it. The remaining fallen angels retreated, following their commander. Ben's transformation finally gave out, golden light fading as he reverted to human form. Without the Seraphim's power to keep him aloft in the breach, he began to fall. Ben! Gwen cried out, attempting to extend her mana platform to catch him, but the distance and interference from the breach made precision difficult. Before he could plummet far, strong arms caught him. Rias held him securely, her devil wings bearing them both away from the breach toward solid ground. That, she said with surprising lightness given the circumstances, was either extremely brave or extremely foolish. Despite his exhaustion, Ben managed a weak smile. Why not both? She returned the smile, and for a moment, their faces were close enough that Ben could see flecks of darker blue in her teal eyes. Indeed, the best plans often are. They landed on the rooftop where the others were gathering. Kevin and Rook rushed forward, while Hope maintained the containment spell with Gwen, both women showing signs of magical fatigue. Did it work? Kevin demanded. As the breach closed, Ben shook his head, leaning heavily on Rook for support as Rias released him. Not closed. Stabilized. There's a difference. A significant one, Sona confirmed, joining them with data displays projected from a device that seamlessly blended technology and magic. You've essentially created a controlled doorway between dimensions rather than an uncontrolled tear. Which means, Rook prompted. Which means, Rias explained, that passage between realms is still possible, but now regulated by the framework Ben established. Random incursions should cease. Hope and Gwen finally completed their spell, The containment matrix now self-sustaining. They approached the group, both wobbling slightly from exertion. Next time you decide to rewrite dimensional physics, Hope said to Ben, a little warning would be nice. That spell almost collapsed 3 times while you were playing aerial tag with Wing Boy. The containment will hold, Gwen added more constructively, but it's not permanent. A few days, at most before it requires reinforcement. Rias nodded thoughtfully, which gives us time to prepare a more permanent solution. She turned to Ben. This also creates an opportunity. With a stable passage between dimensions, we can visit the underworld, Ben concluded, understanding immediately. Find information about the keystones, maybe figure out what Kokobile's next move will be. Precisely, Rias confirmed. My brother, Sirzex, possesses knowledge about the Great War and the keystones that isn't recorded in any accessible texts. And Grayfia, whom you've already met, serves as his queen. Her insights would be invaluable. Ben looked at his team. What do you think? I think, Gwen replied, that rushing into another dimension without proper preparation would be reckless. Agreed, Rook said. However, our options for gathering critical intelligence seem limited. Kevin shrugged. When has another dimension ever stopped us before? I say we go, but prepared for trouble. Hope, surprisingly, nodded. The breach's stability works both ways. If something goes wrong, you'll have a clear path back. She hesitated, then added, and I should probably come along. My knowledge of dimensional mechanics might be useful. Quote. Ben raised his eyebrows. You're volunteering to help. Don't make it weird, Tennyson, Hope snapped, though without real heat. Legerdemain is still in danger. Fixing this mess fixes my home too. Quote. Then it's settled, Ben decided, looking to Rias. When do we leave? After you've rested, she replied firmly. The Seraphim form drained you significantly. You'll need your strength for what comes next. As if to emphasize her point, Ben's knees chose that moment to buckle. Only Rook's quick reflexes prevented him from collapsing entirely. Perhaps medical attention would be advisable, Rook suggested, concern evident in his voice. I'm fine, Ben insisted automatically. Just tired. The Seraphim interface draws on life energy, Akino explained, approaching to examine Ben with knowing eyes. Without proper training, each transformation exacts a heavy toll. Great, Ben muttered. Another watch with hidden costs. Rias placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. Rest today. Tomorrow, we journey to the underworld. There, perhaps we can find answers, about the Keystones, about Kokobeel's plans, and about why the Seraphim chose you specifically. The way she said that last part carried a weight Ben couldn't quite decipher, as if she suspected something she wasn't ready to share. Before he could question her, Max's voice came through their communicators. Status report, his grandfather asked, the sounds of ongoing evacuation audible in the background. Breach contained but not closed, Ben reported. Kokobeel retreated. Situation stable for now. Good work, Max replied, relief evident even through the static. Return to headquarters for debriefing when you're able. As the group prepared to depart, Ben found his gaze drawn back to the stabilized breach hanging above Bellwood, a doorway between worlds that had previously been separated for millennia. The Seraphim Omnitrix pulsed gently against his wrist, as if reminding him of responsibilities not yet fully understood. Don't worry, Rias said softly, following his gaze. The House of Grimoire stands with you. Whatever comes next, you won't face it alone. Here was something in her voice, a sincerity, a personal commitment beyond political alliance, that caught Ben's attention. He turned to find her watching him with an expression that blended concern, curiosity, and something else he couldn't quite name. Thanks, he replied simply, too exhausted for eloquence. For the help, and for catching me. Her lips curved into a smile that transformed her entire face, softening the regal bearing into something warmer. You're welcome, Ben Tennyson. Though I suspect that before this is over, we'll all be catching each other at various points. With that cryptic statement, she turned to coordinate with her peerage, leaving Ben to wonder just what awaited them in the underworld, and why he felt that crossing the threshold would change everything in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. The underworld defied all of Ben's expectations. He had imagined a hellscape of fire and brimstone, tortured souls and nightmarish landscapes. Instead, he found himself standing beneath a crimson sky where multiple moons hung in impossible proximity, overlooking a landscape that blended medieval European architecture with sleek modernity, all set among forests and mountains that seemed almost Earth-like in their beauty. Not quite the hell you expected? Rias asked with amusement, noting his stunned expression. Not even close, Ben admitted, still trying to process the vista before him. They had traveled through the stabilized breach early that morning, after Ben had recovered sufficiently from using the Seraphim form. Their party consisted of Ben, Gwen, Kevin, Hope, and Rias's complete peerage. Rook had remained behind with Max to coordinate continued monitoring of other dimensional weak points that had appeared globally. The breach had deposited them on a hillside overlooking what Rias identified as the territory of House Grimoire, a sprawling estate that seemed to encompass an area the size of a small country, with a castle at its center that would make European royalty weep with envy. The underworld exists in parallel to the human world, Rias explained as they began their descent toward the estate. What humans interpreted as hell, through religious texts was merely a filtered understanding of our dimension. Though certain regions do more closely match those descriptions, Sona added precisely. Particularly the deeper territories where the old Satan faction holds influence. Quote, Hope studied their surroundings with professional interest, her expertise in dimensional magic evident in her analytical gaze. The magical saturation here is incredible. The ambient energy makes legerdemain seem subtle by comparison. Devil society is built on magic, Akino confirmed. It permeates every aspect of our existence. As they approached the estate proper, Ben noticed increasing activity. Devil servants, or were they staff? Pausing in their duties to bow respectfully as Rias passed, their expressions ranging from reverence to barely concealed curiosity at the human visitors. Word of our arrival has preceded us, Rias noted, acknowledging the greetings with practiced grace. My brother will be expecting us. Is that good or bad? Kevin asked skeptically. Both, potentially. Rias replied with surprising candor. Seraphim will welcome the bearer of the Seraphim as an honored guest. But the political implications of a human possessing such power, those will concern him. Quote, the castle grew more impressive as they approached, its architecture somehow blending Gothic grandeur with organic elements that suggested the building had grown rather than been constructed. Magic sustained floating gardens between towers, while water features defied gravity in decorative displays. At the main entrance, a delegation awaited them, led by a familiar silver-haired woman whose crimson eyes regarded Ben with measured assessment. Grayfia, Rias greeted with formal respect. Lady Rias, Grayfia returned, then shifted her attention to Ben. Bearer of the Seraphim, you honor the House of Grimoire with your presence. Ben, uncertain of the proper protocol, settled for a respectful nod. Thanks for having us. Nice place you've got here. Grayfia's expression remained impassive, though Ben thought he detected the slightest hint of amusement in her eyes. Lord Seraphim awaits in the grand study. If you will follow me. She turned without waiting for response, leading them through corridors that seemed to extend impossibly, decorated with artwork spanning what must have been millennia of history. Ben noticed that many pieces depicted battles, angels against devils, light against darkness, often with a third faction involved that he assumed represented the fallen angels. The Great War features prominently in our historical record, Rias explained quietly. Noticing his interest, its impact shaped everything that followed. Finally, they reached an ornate door inscribed with the Grimoire family crest, the same symbol Ben had seen on Rias's magical circles. Grayfia paused, turning to address them once more. Lord Seraphim has requested a private audience with the bearer and Lady Rias initially. The rest of your party will be to guest accommodations and may join you shortly. Gwen frowned. I don't like splitting up in an unfamiliar dimension. It's standard protocol, Rias assured her. And despite appearances, you are under the protection of House Grimoire while here. No harm will come to you. After a moment of silent communication between the cousins, a skill honed through years of shared danger, Gwen nodded reluctantly. Fine, but the first sign of trouble. You'll blast your way through the castle to find me, Ben finished with a smile. I know. As the others were led away by attendants, Grayfia opened the grand study doors. The room beyond was vast, lined with bookshelves that reached toward a ceiling painted with cosmic scenes. A massive desk occupied one end, while comfortable seating arrangements were scattered throughout. Near a fireplace that burned with blue flames stood a man who could only be Rias's brother. The family resemblance was unmistakable, the same crimson hair, similar facial features. Though Seraphim possessed an aura of power that made the air around him seem heavier, as if reality itself acknowledged his significance. Ah, my dear sister, Seraphim greeted warmly, his forma demeanor softening immediately at the sight of Rias. And the bearer of the Seraphim. His gaze shifted to Ben, studying him with open curiosity. Benjamin Tennyson, your reputation precedes you, even across dimensional boundaries. Ben stepped forward, conscious of both the Omnitrix and Seraphim interface on his wrists. Lord Seraphim, thanks for seeing us. Please, simply Seraphim will suffice, he replied with a disarming smile. After all, one who wields a cosmic keystone stands as an equal to the Satans in many respects. Rias's eyebrows rose slightly at this, suggesting the statement carried more significance than Ben recognized. Please, be seated, Seraphim continued, gesturing to comfortable chairs near the fireplace. We have much to discuss regarding the convergence, Kokobil's actions, and of course, the Seraphim interface's unexpected choice of bearer. As they settled, Grayfia efficiently served tea from a service that appeared without visible summoning. Ben accepted a cup, noting the liquid inside seemed to shimmer with subtle power. Devil tea, Seraphim explained, noting Ben's hesitation. Quite safe for humans, I assure you. It will help restore energy depleted by the Seraphim form. Ben took a cautious sip and was surprised by the taste. Like honey and starlight, if starlight had a flavor. Immediately, he felt some of his lingering fatigue recede. Now then, Seraphim began, his expression growing more serious. Let us address the situation directly. The dimensional barriers are weakening precisely as foretold in the abyssal prophecies. The convergence has begun ahead of schedule, accelerated by Kokobil's interference, and the Seraphim interface has chosen a human bearer rather than returning to celestial hands as many expected. The what prophecies? Ben asked, focusing on the most immediately concerning part of that statement. The abyssal prophecies, Rias repeated. Ancient texts written during the final days of the Great War, supposedly transcribed from the dying words of the biblical God himself. They foretold many events, Seraphim elaborated, including the eventual thinning of dimensional barriers and the return of the 4 keystones to active use. However, he paused, studying Ben thoughtfully. They were quite specific about the bearer of the Seraphim being of celestial lineage. The implication hung in the air for a moment before Ben processed it. Wait, you're saying I shouldn't have been able to use this thing? That it should have chosen an actual angel? Precisely, Seraphim confirmed, which raises fascinating questions about your heritage. Benjamin Tennyson. Ben laughed involuntarily. My heritage? I'm from Bellwood. My parents are Carl and Sandra Tennyson. Completely normal humans, are they? Seraphim asked mildly. And yet, your cousin manifests abilities remarkably similar to anodite energy manipulation. Your grandfather became one of Earth's most accomplished defenders against extraterrestrial threats. And you yourself have demonstrated unprecedented compatibility with the Omnitrix, a device that, by its creator's admission, should have overwhelmed any ordinary human consciousness. Ben fell silent, considering this perspective for the first time. His family had always been exceptional, but he'd attributed that to personality and circumstance, not some hidden lineage. You believe Ben has celestial ancestry? Rias asked her brother, equally surprised by this theory. It would explain much, Seraphim replied, including why the Seraphim interface responded to him so powerfully. The Alt-ER native explanation is that the prophecies themselves were flawed, also possible, but less likely given their accuracy in other matters. Grayfia, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke. There is another possibility, my lord. The original Omnitrix may have altered the bearer's fundamental nature sufficiently to create compatibility where none existed naturally. Seraphim nodded thoughtfully. An intriguing theory. Years of DNA recombination and transformation might indeed have prepared your essence to receive celestial power, Benjamin. Ben, he corrected automatically, still processing these revelations. Just Ben is fine. The Seraphim interface chose that moment to activate, projecting its holographic display without prompting. The symbols arranged themselves in patterns that scrolled too quickly for Ben to follow, but Seraphim leaned forward with intense interest. Fascinating, he murmured. It's searching its archives, attempting to analyze your compatibility parameters. The display suddenly stabilized, showing what appeared to be a DNA helix, but with additional structures interwoven that didn't match any biology Ben recognized. Ah, Seraphim said, as if confirming a suspicion. Not celestial heritage directly. Something else. Something the Seraphim recognizes as kindred. Can you read that? Ben asked, gesturing to the symbols accompanying the display. Only partially, Seraphim admitted. The language predates the Great War, perhaps creation itself. But this section, he pointed to a repeating pattern, refers to what might translate as Universe Walker, or Realm Crosser. The Contemelia, Ben whispered, a memory surfacing from his confrontation with Maltruant at the beginning of time itself. You recognize the reference? Seraphim asked sharply. Ben nodded slowly. The Contemelia were fifth-dimensional beings who oversaw the creation of the universe, my universe, at least. I encountered them once, briefly. This revelation clearly startled even the composed Seraphim. You've had direct contact with primordial creator entities. It's a long story involving time travel and a rogue chronosapian, Ben explained with the coolness of someone who had long since accepted the bizarreness of his life. But yes, I met them at the literal beginning of time. Seraphim exchanged a meaningful glance with Grayfia before returning his attention to Ben. Then perhaps the prophecy was correct after all, merely misinterpreted. Not celestial lineage in the sense of angelic heritage, but connection to creator beings of another classification entirely. Rias had been unusually quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. Brother, what does this mean for the convergence? For Kokobil's plans? Seraphim's expression darkened. It means that Kokobile is likely aware of the significance of Ben's compatibility with the Seraphim. His retreat was tactical, not defeated. He will be gathering resources, perhaps seeking the other keystones while we deliberate. The other keystones, Ben repeated. You mentioned there are 4 total. Where are the others? The infernal engine, the demonic counterpart to the Seraphim, was last. Known to be in the deepest vault of the original Lucifer's treasury, Seraphim explained. The arcane nexus, governing natural magic, was entrusted to the Norse pantheon, specifically to Odin's keeping. And the cosmic fulcrum, regulating fundamental forces, was hidden within a pocket dimension accessible only through specific celestial alignments. So Kokobile could be after any of them, Ben concluded grimly. Or all of them, Seraphim corrected, though the infernal engine would be particularly difficult for a fallen angel to access, given the safeguards against celestial energy that protect it. The Seraphim interface pulsed, its display shifting to show what appeared to be a map, not of physical geography but of dimensional connections, with 4 distinct nodes highlighted in different colors. It's tracking the other keystones, Rias realized, leaning closer to study the projection. Yes, Seraphim confirmed, and more concerning, it appears the arcane nexus is active. Someone has claimed it. Ben studied the map, noting that one of the 4 nodes, glowing with violet energy, pulsed more intensely than the others. How can you tell it's been claimed rather than just located? The resonance pattern, Seraphim explained, pointing to wave-like emanations spreading from the violet node. A dormant keystone maintains a steady signal. An activated one pulses with its bearer's life rhythm. So someone else is out there with one of these things, Ben summarized. Friend or foe? Unknown, Seraphim admitted, but given recent events, we should assume the latter until proven otherwise. Grayfia stepped forward again, addressing Seraphim directly. My lord, perhaps it would be prudent to show the bearer the archives. The historical context may provide insights we have overlooked. Seraphim nodded in agreement. An excellent suggestion. The Grimoire archives contain records dating back to the earliest days of the Great War, including first-hand accounts of the Keystone's creation. Archives sound good, Ben agreed, finishing the restorative tea. But first, I'd like to check on my friends. Make sure they're settled in okay. Of course, Seraphim replied with an understanding smile. Family loyalty, another trait that suggests interesting heritage. As they prepared to leave the study, Seraphim placed a hand on Ben's shoulder, his expression suddenly more serious. One final matter, Ben Tennyson. The power you now wield places you in a unique position within supernatural politics. Many factions will seek your allegiance, your power, or your elimination. I would be remiss not to offer the formal protection of House Grimoire during your time in our realm. I appreciate that, Ben replied sincerely. Though I've got some experience with being targeted by powerful entities. Undoubtedly, Seraphim acknowledged. But the supernatural world operates by different rules than even the extraterrestrial conflicts you've navigated. Ancient pacts, blood oaths, soul NTRACTS, these bind even the most powerful beings to certain behaviors. Rias stepped closer, her expression earnest. What my brother is trying to say, Ben, is that without formal affiliation, UXC Saint in a dangerous limbo, neither under protection nor bound by the conventions that prevent open conflict between factions. So what are you suggesting? Ben asked, sensing something significant beneath their careful wording. A formal alliance, Seraphim stated. Not servitude or peerage, but mutual protection and support. The House of Grimoire would stand as your advocates in supernatural affairs. And you would be recognized as an honored ally rather than an unaffiliated power. Ben considered this carefully, aware that agreements in this dimension likely carried weight beyond mere words. What would that involve exactly? A simple ceremony, Grayfia explained. An exchange of magical oath bindings that establish the parameters of alliance. Entirely reciprocal, with clearly defined boundaries. I'll think about it, Ben decided, after I've seen these archives and talked with my team. Seraphim nodded, apparently satisfied with this response. Fair enough. Rias can answer any questions you might have about the process. Now, shall we see to your companions? As they exited the study, Ben noticed Rias watching him with an expression that mixed concern with something warmer. When she caught his questioning glance, she simply smiled. Welcome to the underworld, Ben Tennyson, she said softly. I suspect it may surprise you in many ways before we're done. Looking at the impossible beauty of this supposed hell, the complexity of its politics, and the unexpected revelations about his own nature, Ben could only agree. The convergence of dimensions had only just begun, and his understanding of reality was being fundamentally challenged. The Seraphim interface pulsed gently against his wrist, as if in confirmation. Whatever came next would require everything he'd learned as a hero, and much he had yet to discover about himself. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.